The demise of the Phoenix Suns appears to be coming more quickly than some Nets fans would have ever dreamed of. What it looks like for the Brooklyn Nets picks going forward that they got from Phoenix, what it looks like for Phoenix going forward. Is there any way they're going to be able to turn it around, and how this is all coming together in a way that Nets fans can probably appreciate? We're going to break it all down. But first, the music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo. All right, welcome back to the Locked On Nets podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Doug Norrie here. No Adam Armbrecht here. I was record heading into a Monday after another weekend of no Nets in the playoffs, but the playoffs seeming to still sort of matter, or really matter, for the Brooklyn Nets future. And that's been, we joked about it a little bit, but also something of a running theme of how, the Nets exited this season in less than dramatic fashion, but things that happen in the playoffs and are happening in the playoffs do have and are tied to sort of what might happen or what could happen with the Nets in the future. So a lot of different ways that we can look at these NBA playoffs, which have been pretty interesting. Definitely a changing of the guard, apparently kind of changing of the guard season, probably second year of changing the guard. This one looks even more dramatic, and have to obviously start with what's happened to the Phoenix Suns so far in these playoffs. As a programming note, just want to let you know, I am recording this on Sunday afternoon prior to the Suns playing the Timberwolves on Sunday night. That doesn't tip off till 9:30 p.m. Eastern. I will say, independent of what happens in that game, it really is not going to change. It wouldn't have changed my opinion on sort of like this podcast and sort of what we're looking at going forward with the Phoenix Suns situation. So like as of now, recording this, the Suns are down 3-0. There's already talk about Frank Vogel being fired, even though the series isn't even over yet. They have not looked good in the games, or just kind of have looked overmatched in the games that they played so far against Minnesota. So even if Phoenix at home were to pull this one out and take the series to 3-1, or instead of just getting swept, again, it's really not gonna change sort of the overall high level view of what's happening here in Phoenix. They lost by 17 to the Timberwolves the other night. They lost by 12 in game 2, and they lost by 25 in game 1. So I just don't see a path, even if they were to pull off the one win, a la what the Lakers did against Denver, and maybe just go for the gentleman's sweep here. It's not going to change the overall tenor of what we're going to talk about when it comes to sort of how the Brooklyn Nets and the Phoenix Suns are tied together in ways where Nets fans, honestly, at this point, can't do anything else but root pretty heavily against the Phoenix Suns, sort of in the same way, or much in the same way, that Houston fans want to see the Nets just bottom out here over the foreseeable future because of the control of those picks. Nets have the same kind of control over the Suns picks going forward, and the Suns situation is looking very dire. And dire, well, okay, this podcast is going to take this a couple different ways, but in the short term, it looks like the dreams of bringing Kevin Durant in to pair with Devin Booker, to bring Bradley Beal in, to make that sort of a big three and to figure the rest of it out, does not look like that's going to come to fruition, right? It doesn't seem like this isn't anywhere close to a championship level team. It doesn't seem like it's a team that can even make a deep run in the playoffs, just because of how they're built and sort of how little they have after those three guys, and just maybe the overall fit of those three guys. And if you're looking at that, you start asking a lot of questions about the Suns and like, what is their long-term viability with this group together? We know that the way that they're constructed when it comes to money, when the way they're constructed comes to talent, and the way the new CBA sort of really punishes teams that get ultra expensive over the long term, Something that kind of came out after they had made some of these moves, but regardless, they were going to have some hardcore financial problems, kind of no matter what. The new rules coming down from the NBA made it so that it was much going to be even worse for them going forward. It was already going to be hard, but now for the Suns to sort of get better over these next 3 years is going to be darn near impossible, just because of how much money they have committed at the top end, all the draft picks they have out to the Nets already, and just how difficult it is to add players once you're really so far into the tax. And that's really where the Suns are sitting. And so if you're a Nets fan, you're staring at this situation and you're thinking to yourself, I mean, might the Nets just be sitting on an absolute treasure trove of picks? There's a world where it breaks, right? Where they really are. I mean, I'm probably going to end up pumping the brakes a little bit on just how great it's going to be, only because some of what we're talking about is so far in the future that it's tough to do a full victory lap. I think there's a moderate victory lap to be taken here. But stopping short of just doing a little brake pumping on just going all the way that these are going to be, top 5 picks from now all the way through, 2030 or whatever. I'm going to probably stop short of there, but to see how the Suns season has gone and see that it has fallen so far below expectations for overall, just in terms of how this is likely going to shake out, Nets fans have to feel really excited. And the other thing too, is we get to remember with with the Suns, is they got kind of a lot of games out of a guy like we'll start with Kevin Durant. They got a lot of games here out of Kevin Durant, more than he played when he was in a Nets uniform, right? He played 75 games this year, which is like incredible health for a guy who's 35, going to be 36 years old here in the fall. They got 75 games out of him. The most he ever played in Brooklyn was 55. He played 30. Oh, he sat out the first year, obviously. Then he played 35, 55, and 39. So kind of almost doubled up 2 of his years in terms of games from Brooklyn, and then had 20 more than his most years. I mean, are we going to expect Kevin Durant in the age 36 to keep playing 75 games a year at almost 38 minutes a game? It's just not realistic. So there's a lot of ways that this is starting to shake out where we could see this situation in Phoenix go south even faster than expected. Because I think the thing where the Nets, and I'll go through, the package that they have, what they have coming down the pike here from Phoenix and sort of what that can mean. But even the most bearish view of how the Suns could end up operating here in the short term, I don't think had them getting like full health out of KD, but still just seeming so far away from being really good. And if they end up getting swept or they end up losing in 5 to Minnesota, I mean, and in the first round, that just is a team that just, I mean, this was a team that some people thought could, go to the championship this year. I really wasn't one of them, but I could see how you would talk yourself into it. But they ended up 49 and 33. They just stayed out of the play-in game. The West is, likely going to be as good next year. So this situation is really breaking right. Seems like it's breaking right overall for the Brooklyn Nets. And it's hard to root against the demise of one team in one sense. And sometimes that's just the way the chips end up falling or the chess pieces end up moving around, that's just how you're forced to do it. So I want to go through how these Nets picks could shake out, what some of the timeline on this stuff could look like, what they should do or shouldn't do maybe with the picks. We'll get to all of that here. First, tell you about our friends over at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. They got the 2024 Nissan Rogue. That's perfect for city drives and great escapes. It's got the class exclusive Google built in. It's always updating assistant. You can call on for almost anything. And gone are the days of connecting your phone. Forget about that. You got Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store, all built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue's perfect for the midsize crossover. Perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. You also have the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. It's got room up to 8, expansive cargo capacity, advanced available 4x4 capability. You want to get a little off-road going there. 284 horsepower, 6,000 pounds of towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. You got the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, throw in the Nissan Armada as well. Go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. And after that, we got to pause and tell you once again about our friends over at Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flagging the play. We already talked about that. There's just so much good stuff going on in this game. I had to roll it back again in Monopoly Go. You can team up with friends or for time tournaments where you work together. You build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. There's so much to get. You can get unique stickers. You trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. They got cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. They got hilarious emojis. You taunt those friends of yours when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every single day, constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games, digging for treasure. Got the Pachinko robot machine too. There's always times events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. Always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off on the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the Apple Store. Monopoly Go, game on. All right, so what are the Nets looking at in terms of Suns picks? So when they made the Kevin Durant trade last year, that brought in Mikal Bridges and obviously brought in Cam Johnson as well. It also brought in a bunch of different picks from the Phoenix Suns that they're going to capitalize going forward. There's a Royce O'Neal trade thrown in there for seconds too. I'm going to pause on that one just because the Durant one with the first rounders is really the part where we want to take the most focus away, because these are the ones that could convey in a way that just really, really looks good for the Nets, right? Like in the same way that we've lamented many times around the future, specifically this year, which is going to end up being a lottery pick to the Houston Rockets because the Nets didn't end up making the playoffs. There's a chance that we're looking sort of the same thing when it comes to these Phoenix Suns picks as well. So right now they have the 2025. These are all unprotected, by the way. No protections on these. So not worried about where they end up landing. They have a 2025 pick. So not this coming draft, but the year after. They have a 2027 pick from the Suns, 2029 pick, and then they have a 2028 pick swap. That's where they stand with the Phoenix Suns picks as of right now. And it's hard to imagine that these are not, incredibly, incredibly valuable going forward. It's just the way things are setting up in terms of like sort of where the Suns are where they are in salary cap, where they are along the age curve with some of their guys, how we just, there's a chance that we see, only because we've seen it before, is there a chance we see Kevin Durant ask for another trade? Is there a chance we see Devin Booker ask for a trade? Is there a chance we see Bradley Beal ask for a trade? I mean, it's possible. I'm not sure who would take his contract, and Beal has a no trade clause. I'll go through some of the money here in a second. But when you put it on the table that there could be growing frustration within the team, when you look at the health and the overall ages of some of these guys, like I mentioned with Kevin Durant before, and then you look at the time out into the future around these picks with no protections on them, there's a lot of different stories that you can start to tell yourself about how these could end up really good. Now, again, 2027, 2029, 2028 swap. I mean, we're really far out from this stuff. Lots of stuff in the NBA can happen. We've seen it many times. It's impossible to, I think, project all the way out with those picks and just pat everyone on the back and say, this is, these are for sure going to be these like top 5, top 10 picks. I don't think it's a for sure thing, but is it lining up that way? Obviously. I think you have to give Sean Marks credit here for standing the line. It seems like when he first traded when he traded Kevin Durant for Bridges, it appears like sort of from reporting that has happened kind of at the time and after that, they just stood firm on wanting no protections on these picks, wanting to make sure Bridges was in there, make sure Cam Johnson was in there, kind of just holding Suns completely over one to make sure they got every single piece out of it. Something that GM James Jones apparently was not a fan of, probably correctly, to say like, hey, Kevin Durant's already asking for a trade. Do we need to give them every single thing? And Mark stood firm, and it appears that Matt Ishbia, the owner of the Suns, sort of ended up overruling all of those things and just saying, do it no matter what. And an incredible gift to get that new owner piece from, because, remember, he was the new owner of the Suns at the time. Incredible to get that sort of new owner energy going with stuff out the door to bring in Kevin Durant, because it ends up where they do get just a massive haul. And I really, one of those hauls that I actually wonder how much we'll see a trade like this going forward, right? Like I wonder a little bit about, will these massive, all the picks, no protections, players to stuff end up happening short of the ultra short list of guys. And maybe Durant's one of those guys, right? Like maybe he just is just the superstar kind of guy that you end up just turning over the full bag for. I do wonder if there's going to be some gun shyness to wanting to do that after looking at the Harden trade with Phoenix. Sorry, the Harden trade with Houston the first time there with Nets, and then this Durant trade on the other way out. But when you look at the Suns, for sort of what the future holds for them, the folks that want to get like really excited about how bad this could get. So the contract situation with these guys, Kevin Durant signed through 25-26. He makes $54.7 million in that season. And then he's going to be a free agent. Obviously, at that point, he would be 37 years old. So getting older. I think his game ages gracefully, but he's not going to be the Kevin Durant that, he's not going to be the Hall of Fame version of Kevin Durant. This will be awesome, I think. But it's hard to imagine he's going to get leaps and bounds better going forward. You have Devin Booker signed all the way through 27-28. He's 27 right now. So he's signed through his age 32 season where he's going to make $62 million. Probably don't see like that number. I don't think that's going to be like a horrible contract, though his playoffs have been not amazing, obviously, so far, but Booker obviously still really, really good. If he's on the team, I think it's gonna be hard for the team to be really bad. Now, they're not going to be great, but if we, for the Nets to really capitalize on these picks, the Suns have to be bad, right? Like that's the hope, is that they're in the lottery, they're not making the playoffs, they're bad. These lottery picks end up spiking, and the Nets get awesome picks. If Booker's on the team all the way through, then he's good enough that he's not going to make him a 50-win team by himself, but he's a really good player, and they're not going to be a horrible, horrible team. Where you get a little dicey is a guy like Bradley Beal, who went through bouts of injury stuff this year, has the no trade clause, has a $57 million player option in his age 34 season in 26-27. I mean, I would say he's all but guaranteed to pick that up. I cannot imagine someone signing a 34-year-old Bradley Beal for $57 million in 2026-27. So you have to believe that money is already committed and on the books. After that, if you figure that they're going to have to think, if let's say no one asks out, they're going to be running it back with these three guys. They're going to need pristine health. They're going to need to just somehow, hopefully they end up getting sort of like low-end free agent minimum kind of guys, because they're going to be, not because of the new CBA, they're not going to be able to go into the mid-level. They're not going to be able to trade stuff, and not going to be able to aggregate salaries coming back in order to trade guys. So these guys are going to get close to being untradeable. You already have Beal with the no trade clause, so he could just say, no, I don't want to go anywhere else, right? Like I want to stay in Phoenix. And then at that point, maybe the only options are to trade a guy like Devin Booker just to try to reset it. I mean, that would be the ultimate for Nets fans. Like if Devin Booker ends up saying, no, I want to be out of here. Because if that's the case, then you start to see a path where the Suns could end up being like pretty bad, right? Like Booker's gone. You can't count on Durant's health. Beal's clearly lost a few steps here and is super expensive. And at that point, if they've gone into like the repeater tax and they're unable to really take in money via free agency, now you're looking at a situation, I think, where that's probably like the end up dream scenario. But yeah, no matter which way you slice it, here's the thing: no matter which way you slice it with these Suns picks, like it's ending up pretty good for the Nets. Could it end up great? Yes. Will it end up bad? No. Like the Nets are in a good spot almost no matter what. Like there's just so few outs for what Phoenix has between the money that's on the books, the players that they have, and where they are along their age curves, just who it is, and their inability to get better through the draft or really through free agency anytime soon. There's just no way that these picks end up being bad value for the Nets. Really, the only question now is, can they be phenomenal value? Can they be like all-time stuff, like a la what the Nets originally sent to the Celtics? It's crazy. The Nets are in all these examples. Like what the Nets originally sent to the Celtics, where the Celtics spiked that into Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, right? Like in the KG and Paul Pierce piece. Like that's the question. Like, are they going to get to be that great? I'm not sure about that. But will this ever be a bad package? There's no way. There's just too much stuff here. There's too few ways for the Suns to get better. There's too many picks already associated with it. Like I said, 3 firsts and that swap. It's almost like game over time for the Suns. And I think we're only probably asking ourselves like how great the package could be. Do you want to talk about like sort of how the Nets should think about using these picks, which is something that we're going to talk a lot about in this offseason and going forward, because this is probably where the biggest part of the debate comes in. We'll get into that here in a second. Before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at DoorDash. Look, we got Mother's Day right around the corner. I'm well aware of that. I'm also a guy that sometimes can kind of let these things get a little bit away from me on the old calendar. This is where DoorDash can step in. You can start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brands that she loves. It's delivered the same day, all with DoorDash. Look, moms are a gift. We all know this. Whether it's your mom, whether it's the wife, whatever it is you got going over there, you want to give her the best this Mother's Day. You want to get gifts. You want to give gifts as thoughtful as she is with DoorDash. You select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to feel the best tech out there with self-care essentials and more. Best part, delivered right to her front door this Mother's Day. Grab something thoughtful for the mom over on DoorDash. Surprise her from wherever you are with those bouquets, the gift cards, self-care treats, and so much more to make the day better. And like I said, you're going to get it same day. So even if you wait to the last second, DoorDash is going to be there to help you out. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 plus on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's Locked On NBA. Order you're using DoorDash today. Terms apply. All right, so the final question to ask with this is like, where should the Nets go with these picks? Like, what is the, how valuable are these things? How much should the Nets be wanting to just retain them going forward and hold on to them with like a steel fist and never let go? Or should these be things that these picks, capitalize on their perceived value now, right? For perceived value for all the reasons that I just walked up, right? Because since nobody knows what the future holds, 27, 28, 29, these years that are way in advance, way out in the future for us, should the Nets think about capitalizing on whatever their apparent value is now as people watch the Suns make this exit potentially out of the playoffs? And will the value of them like sort of maybe never be higher, right? Like there's worlds to think about it that way. Are we thinking about the Nets, or should we think about the Suns and everyone sort of looking at them already stomping on the graves and saying they're going to be terrible for years and years to come? And those picks, everyone's going to want to get their hands on those picks. This is going to be the tricky question that Sean Marks and company have to ask themselves going into this offseason and going into the offseason after, right? So there's none of these picks can be this year. So they're not looking at having to make that decision this year. But for teams that are in maybe superstar ship off mode and are trying to do a rebuild of their own, are the Suns picks going to look valuable enough where the Nets don't have to trade all of them or trade, one or two and be able to bring really good players in the door? It's going to be interesting. Like I'm not positive about this, right? Like this one is I think this is at the core of sort of like how you think about the Nets going forward. Is it good enough to sort of play the really long game with these picks and try to go all the way out into the future and sort of rebuild now along this timeline and try to, work in free agency next year where you don't have to unload any of these and maybe sign a guy through free agency? I mean, that we know that's getting more and more difficult every single season. We also know that potentially the 2025 free agent class is going to be a very, very strong one, right? If everyone just doesn't extend and kind of sits on it and waits for this new TV deal and just waits to get all the way to unrestricted free agency, we are looking at a group of names that could be really, really interesting, and are we then looking at a thing sort of like what the Nets did with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving years ago, where they were able to take these guys in with cap space and just, away you go and not have to give some of the assets that they didn't already have? I mean, that was the dream situation. I'm skeptical that that's really going to be, a move that they can ultimately make. So the next question you ask yourselves, like between the picks that they still do have, like their own picks that they haven't traded to Houston and the ones that will, once they're clear of the Houston deal, plus these Suns picks, is there enough? Like, do the Nets have enough in their coffers now to be able to, and by the way, they still have a first 2029 Dallas first also. So, and then and they finally get back to their own in 29, but that might be a swap with Houston. But either way, like once we're back into having their own picks, which they're going to have, again, like once they're clear of the Houston deal, and then these Phoenix picks plus the Dallas picks, plus they got some seconds in there. Is that enough to basically bring in two superstars, right? Because like at that point, you're thinking in terms of like the highest ceiling possible. I don't think you want to just think about like using some of this to bring in one needle mover guy. I think you have to be thinking about, do you have enough in the coffers? Is your powder dry enough to bring in two of like the elite guys, or at least like one majorly elite guy and then one 1A kind of guy, right? Like, is this going to be enough to do it? If you think it is, then, and like I'll throw names out. Like if you could trade for like Giannis and Donovan Mitchell, let's say, right? Like again, making these names. Mitchell, I'm not really making up because there's been so much smoke there. But like a guy like Giannis, right? Like the Bucks flame out. Lillard, as of this game, Lillard and Giannis were both sitting out. Maybe Giannis gets to 2025 and he's getting increasingly unhappy, and he's still a kind of superpower kind of guy. And then Mitchell's just, I'm throwing out there because he's already had, his name has been, we talk about him once a week around whether he's going to come to the Nets. So let's say like those two guys, right? And then the list of other guys who could just shake loose here over the next few years. If you think that these packages are enough to grab two of these guys and still retain Bridges, still have like Cam Thomas here, or you think you're going to get something out of Noah Clowney, you're going to re-sign Claxton, you're going to be clear of Ben Simmons' money, right? Like, is that enough to make this team Eastern Conference final? I mean, championship contender? It's hard to see it totally, but I think it's definitely possible. My thinking on this is that would have to be the ultimate. Like, I don't know if I would want to take a halfway measure in getting rid of one of these picks and then not having anything else materialize on like the talent spectrum from bringing other guys in. That I think would be the worst case scenario. I think the best case scenarios that the Nets can do are sort of like stand pat and hope for ultimate draft value out of this and just kind of eat it for the next few years and hope you get some guys in free agency. Unexciting, but thinking really ahead about like this long-term build. I don't think that's that realistic. I don't think the Nets are going to go that way. I would also put in there the trade for two, superstar level 1 and then level 1A, pair with the guys and team up with the guys that are already here in the building. If you can pull that off. And now you have like an Eastern Conference finalist kind of guy, right? Or kind of team. I think that's also a realistic scenario. I think easily the worst of that version would be to trade some of this stash for someone decent this year, let's say Mitchell, and then nothing else materializes. Like that would be the really hard one, I think, to swallow. And that's actually the situation that has me the most worried, is something like that. Now, I get it. Like you trade for one guy thinking the next guy is going to come, and you can't control the future. I get that part, and it's unknown, and you just can never know for sure who is going to be available, if your trade package is going to be good enough, if those guys are going to want to come here. Like there's a lot of ifs along here, and sometimes you just have to take risks. I totally get that part of it. But the worst version of this would be to, like, again, I don't have another way to put it, to go halfway into this, to just go halfway and say, we're going to bring in one of these guys and it just doesn't work out, or like they get marginally better, but 6 seed or something like that, 7 seed. And then nothing else comes of it, and now you're just out like the sort of prime asset to buy yourself a few more wins. That is the part that I get a little worried is going to end up happening. But it does very, very much appear that Sean Marks is making this 2025 play. I think there's a world where it could really work out, and there's a world where these Phoenix Suns picks are so valuable that they now are able to begin attracting some of the biggest names in basketball when it comes to bringing in talent. And for that, it's going to probably end up looking like these were really worth it. And that's just a really good thing for the Nets. So we'll see how it ends up shaking out. We'll see how it ends up shaking out ultimately with the Suns. Again, are they going to come back in the series? You're going to know by the time you listen to it what's already happened or what hasn't happened yet. But like I said at the beginning, doesn't change my thought process too much on it. All right, going to get out of here. Packed week of stuff coming at you, talking a little more Nets off season, seeing how things are going to shake out, seeing how these playoffs are shaking out as well. Make sure you are subscribed to Locked On Nets over on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen to podcasts as well. Always get to this part. I gave Adam a hard time the other day because I said the only one who's able to get away with not having a great quote is me when I do the podcast solo, because that's where I say Adam Armbrecht, one of the all-time great poets. We're back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.